Welcome to the Eschatology Podcast. This is Clifton. If you've ever experienced doing something with the knowledge that you'll never be able to do it justice, this is definitely one of those times for me. This episode is a little bit different than our others in that instead of being recorded over Skype, it's in the middle of an active machine shop, so it's a bit more noisy than some episodes, less so than others. Also, it's a little more abstract and casual, even for us. And there's a couple visual cues that happen that seem best to leave to your imagination rather than trying to explain them in the middle of the recording. So, without further ado, enjoy the episode.
I have my AutoSound 2000 t-shirt on. I got some left over.
What a coincidence.
No, it's not private. He's going to put it on the internet.
No conversation is private anymore, is it?
No, that's true. A lot of things changed with the tech briefs that Dave and I wrote. Yeah. We brought a little bit of science to it. How did I get into car audio? I don't know if I should be talking about this. I got to think about it. Give me a minute here. Can we stop just for a second?
Yeah.
Okay. You can start recording this. Well, my background was in sound reinforcement. That's what I did on a fairly large scale. Sound for coliseums, for concerts, and I did a lot of studio work. At the time that I got into car audio, I had put together a facility that manufactured, at that time, it was just cassettes. We manufactured them for major record labels, all the big labels.
Right.
And I kind of saw that the 8-track was going to go down,
Yeah.
and that the next big format was going to be the cassette. So I got in that early, and I developed a lot of the machinery that was used for manufacturing cassettes.
Okay.
In fact, I don't know how many patents I have on cassette manufacturing equipment, but it's probably more than a dozen or so, just on cassettes.
And around what time period was
I think
this?
my first patent was 1981, maybe a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The filing date on it, but it was for a device that spliced tape together, and so you could automatically wind it in cassette shells.
Okay.
And before long, probably 95% of the pre-recorded cassettes made in the United States and eventually worldwide were made under that patent. But there were several patents.
Right.
And so I had a large manufacturing facility, and it was the largest independent manufacturer of cassettes in the country. I had a real strong interest in audio.
Yeah.
And I bought a new car sometime around, it was in 85 or 6. Dropped it off at a car stereo shop.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned they're probably not in business anymore, but I dropped the new car off, and I told them, I said, here, I really don't have too much of a budget here, just make it nice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be afraid to spend some money on it.
Right.
I came back to get it like 2 weeks later, and I got it, and then I remember commenting, I said, are you serious? I said, does this sound good to you? I was so taken back by how much money could produce so much bad sound that I said, oh, well, man, I can do this myself. And so I thought I was going to undertake a little project, and I was going to make a nice stereo on my car. I discovered that unlike the auditoriums that I'd been working in and the churches that I'd been putting sound systems in and the studios that I'd done sound systems in, that a car had its own unique audio problem. And it wasn't quite as simple as I thought it was going to be. That led me into a lot of hours spent trying to achieve the same kind of success I could get in a studio in a car.
Right.
And that was tough. And So that's how I got into car audio. And then somebody, and I don't remember who it was, but they were a representative from a company. And they said, oh, they have contests for stuff like this. You should go.
Right.
And so I did. I went to a contest. And let's see, that was in Charlotte. And that was the first one I went to. I had never been to one before. And I actually won that contest. And the guys there said, oh, well, there's a big national contest. You should go to that. And I said, no, I don't have time for that. And so it was 2 years later before I got involved in anything on a big scale. The scale of it was what interested me. Car audio in the early 80s and all through the 80s really and into the early 90s was a big industry. I mean, and part of the reason it was such a big industry was every town had several car stereo shops of any size. And factory car systems were so terrible that you didn't have to know a whole lot to make them better.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just throw a few dollars at it, and gee whiz, a tape deck, a subwoofer box, and a few tweeters here and there, and it's 10 times better than the factory system. Because the factory system back then was a pair of 6x9s in the back deck with a factory radio. Even people that didn't know anything about sound were able to really work wonders.
So the elephant in the room is we're surrounded by Grand National parts. What got you into the Grand Nationals?
What got me into Grand Nationals, piqued my interest, was I had a Ferrari at the time. A friend of mine was a cop, and his undercover car was a T-type, which is a Grand National that's not black. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. He challenged me to a race one day and beat me real bad. Okay, and so that got me really interested in it.
Right.
And then I went to the World Finals in 1989, I believe, and there was a company in Los Angeles that had built a real nice Grand National that was sort of like a national champion. There was a car I'd really been thinking about kind of getting anyhow,
Right.
a Grand National, and here's one already that had a pretty nice stereo in it, so I figured, hey, I made an offer and bought it. And then I put 3 of my best engineers on it for 6 months, and we really tweaked it to death.
So what kind of changes were made from when you bought it to when you started competing that car?
Made significant changes to the loudspeakers, made significant changes to servo interface between the speakers and the amplifiers, put some remote controls in it, put some custom built of my own signal processors in it.
Okay.
Made a really big change to an already good car.
Especially in the signal processing, I would imagine that what many of us take for granted today, that many of the techniques that are used today, all day, every day, weren't there.
It's everywhere now.
Yeah.
But at that time, that was the kind of stuff I was building for professional markets.
Right.
And I sort of adapted them to the car. And now they're commonplace, but back then they were pretty high tech.
Were there any things that you learned during that process that you applied back to using in the studio or in summary? Nope.
No, it only went one way.
You and David Navoni worked on lots of projects together. Was that after your competition, during?
It was sort of midway. The way that came about, I think it was right after the first Masters that I won, which was, back then the prizes were really big.
Right.
I mean, it was $25,000 to win the Masters
Right.
tournament. I was invited by somebody, I think it was Kenwood, but it might have been Pioneer. I can't remember for sure, but they had a big technical conference or something in New Jersey.
Okay.
And I'd never met Dave up to that time
Okay.
because I was a relative newcomer to the industry.
Right.
I didn't, everybody around me knew more people than I did. Okay. I really was an outsider. But I went to New Jersey. I met Dave. He was invited also as a guest speaker at this big conference,
Okay.
a technical conference where a company would bring in all their best installers and have a big technical thing, introduce new products, and talk technical. And so both of us were invited to speak. And immediately, Dave and I were drawn to each other because I had a really strong background in audio. And Dave, being a physicist, he was really into the science. We hit it off pretty quick. And so we stayed in contact a lot for the next several months. And then we decided, let's go to the CES show, which I'd been going to every year for forever. But I was going for the home end and the professional end. And Dave, he was going for, he kind of had owned a couple of car stereo stores. So we went for different reasons, but we also went to meet each other. And we were sitting there one night in one of the lounges just chatting, and some guy came up and asked a question. I answered it, and I turned to Dave after he walked away, and I said, if I had $1 for every time I've answered a question like that, I said, I'd own the country. And he said, yeah, he says, they keep asking the same questions over and over and over again. How do you do this? How does this work? And so forth. And Dave came up with the idea. He said, man, why don't we just get together and write some of these questions down and publish them? And so at that time, one of the publications that I was signed on to was something that NASA was putting out at the time. It was NASA Tech Briefs. I said, well, man, why don't we do like this technical letter I get from NASA? Why don't we have Autosound Tech Briefs? And so we just started letting everybody know we were going to do a newsletter, and it was going to be a subscription. And boy, before long, we had thousands of people signed up getting our monthly newsletter.
Wow.
And it was all technical subjects on car audio.
Right.
And it was breakthrough for most of these people. And I wouldn't even take credit for all of the things that everybody does now that they learn from the tech briefs.
Yeah.
But it was a lot, and it changed car audio forever.
Absolutely.
In fact, virtually almost, and it's changed a lot in the long run too, because almost every car company was a subscriber to that magazine.
Everybody was taking notice.
They were all taking notice. And, I look back in my younger years when you bought a car, muscle car, expensive car, you could have about any kind of wheel you wanted as long as it was a stamped steel wheel. Okay? And the big thing was to get a set of Krager mags or something like that and put on your car. And that was a big aftermarket business. Now, not that it's not still a big aftermarket business, but the car manufacturers are not going to let a market that big go unnoticed without tapping into it.
Right.
And so now, look at the options you have when you go buy a new car. You can get all kinds of not only, fancy wheels, but accessories and stuff like that. And they are not about to let a market like the audio market get away from them.
Right.
And so now, almost any new car you buy has a stereo that was at least as good as what the aftermarket was doing 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
And I even wrote articles in the Tech Briefs about this subject. I said the future of car audio is gonna go to those people that learn how to interface with the cars and make the best use of what's in them to begin with and then improve on it, as opposed to just gutting it all out and throwing a bunch of stuff in. And time has proven that to be true. When I was growing up, if you wanted to make a car faster, it was all about cubic inches and bigger carburetors, you know what I mean, and headers and cams. But now the people that know how to control electronic fuel management systems and turbos and stuff like that, those are the guys that are building fast cars now.
Tuning with computers
That's
instead
right.
of...
That's right. It's not throwing a bunch of bigger parts at it. Heck, the Grand Nationals, I regularly build 700 and 800 horsepower Grand Nationals here regularly. I can show you half a dozen of them here in the process. And so far, our biggest one is 1,700 horsepower, and it's in a 7-second car. Without the computerized control and the digital fuel injection, you can't do that, unless you compare it to top fuel dragsters, but that's not even reality.
It's not going in a car.
No.
So AutoSound 2000, you had the Tech Briefs, you also did test CDs, And then you were producing the ASCA discs for a while, weren't you?
Actually, because I had a studio
Okay.
and I had a CD plant, because the cassette factory turned into a CD and a DVD
Right.
plant.
Okay.
And so for years we made all the test CDs and all the competition CDs, because I had connections with the record companies and could get all the licensing,
Right.
and then all the technical tracks, we just generated them ourselves in one of our studios.
Right.
I'm sure plenty of people want to hear about the MTX 1 million.
Well, yeah, it's out actually in a truck out here.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's still here. I was no longer in active sound quality competition.
Okay.
Dave could give you the details on it, but Lloyd Ivy, who was the owner of MTX at the time, and I don't even know
Yeah.
who is now, he wanted to see his equipment do a little better on the winter stage, and he actually hired myself, Mark Eldridge, and Dave
Mm-hmm.
to get involved with the MTX team, which I think he called Thunder Force or something.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, that he wanted us to work with all those cars and help tune them and give them technical help and go to all the big shows and tweak their
Right.
cars, and we did that for 2 years, and during those 2 years the stage was dominated by those guys.
Wow.
And I think he did that to increase his brand image,
Right.
which I think it did. A lot of people said a bunch of things that were kind of meant to goad me, I guess. Yeah, well, you can do sound quality, but you can't do SPL. After a couple of years of hearing that, I said, okay, well, SPL is nothing but squeezing air. So I got Lloyd to finance part of it, and Auto Sound finance part of it, and then I hired Dr. Gene Petronas, who was a big man at the physics department in Georgia Tech,
Okay.
to help us do a bunch of calculations. And we came up with a solution for making a lot of noise. And so we designed a woofer that had a 6-inch diameter cone that had 6 inches of travel. And if you sit down and figure out how many 18-inch woofers or 10-inch woofers it would take to
How much diameter?
Just-
What diameter?
6-foot diameter
6 foot diameter.
and 6 inches of travel.
Wow.
Now think of the displacement there.
Right.
Okay, it had the woofer itself, not in a box, just the woofer weighed 700 pounds.
Wow.
And it was powered by 6 15,000 watt crown amps that were originally designed to drive the XY coils in an MRI. And I think the very first units were put in at Indianapolis. I put 6 of them in there in a series bridge combination to drive the big giant speaker.
So was it playing actual music, or was it just a?
But technically, it had to be a speaker. We actually incorporated, to actually make music, we put 3 regular cone speakers behind the magnets. Okay, so it could make music,
Right.
but its primary job was just to squeeze
Move
air.
it, yeah.
Okay. It tested in a small brick room. Its design goal was 200 dB.
200.
200, that was a design goal, but we never quite reached that. It did 194. But in a truck, we were never able to achieve that. The problem was when it came time to put it in a truck, we had contracted with somebody to put the truck together. And when he showed up a week before the contest, the baffle wasn't even flat. And the speaker wouldn't fit in the truck.
Oh man.
And we had all kinds of last minute trouble.
Right.
And then when we went to the finals to run the thing, it was run by a microprocessor, and the processor failed. And the thing that was supposed to modulate the power system in the cone, I'll take you out there and show it to you.
Yeah.
It'll blow your mind.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, I don't know if I want you to film it or not, but I'll show it to you. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
The thing that was supposed to control the thing was microprocessor based, and we had a failure in it. And it was working great, like right up to the show.
Of course.
But we were crunched for time,
Right.
because the guy messed up building the baffle to mount it. I guess obviously he was a car audio guy, and the biggest thing he'd ever seen was 18-inch woofer. You know what I mean? And he couldn't even build it with the baffle flat. So we said, well, maybe I can just. We're not going to go home without a try. So maybe I can just control the power level on it by just touching the wires together.
Oh,
That's not possible. Okay, so that's sort of like that. I could make an analogy. It was sort of like you're showing up at a racetrack with a Formula One car that'll only go full throttle, and the only way you can drive it around the track is by controlling the speed with the brakes. You know what I'm saying? Does that
right.
make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and so there was a titanium rod that actuated the cone, and the titanium rod broke. And the cost of fixing the whole thing was just so ridiculous that
It wasn't worth it.
it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
But I couldn't bear to throw it away, so I kind of fixed it and then just left it set. It's been sitting there for 20 years. I still have it.
I know David and you were both involved in doing Twisted Pair as well, as far as signal cables
Well,
and with.
Can't take credit for that because Bell Labs came up with that
Right.
like 100 years ago. Okay, and it was used widespread in professional studio installations and sound systems forever. It's just we kind of brought it to car audio
Got it.
because they were so into shielding. They thought that the way to prevent noise from getting into your stereo was somehow you're going to put a shield around the wire. But the kind of noises they were always fighting, shielding doesn't work. My favorite thing to tell them was that you'd be better off wrapping a lasagna noodle around the wire. It will shield it better. But once you get that in your mind, it's a shield. They shouldn't have called it a shield because it's not a shield for the kind of noise that plays car audio.
Right.
And we brought them to the table and said, look, Twisted Pair works everywhere else. Your internet. Of course, now it's all fiber optic, but back then,
Right.
the audio lines run from East Coast to West Coast, totally unshielded, and they don't pick up any noise,
Right.
and they're parallel with
Electric
power
wires,
lines the
yeah.
whole way. You know what I mean? So, Twisted Pair balanced lines. That's how the rest of the world worked. But car audio, they just felt like the solution was always just more shielding, and so we introduced that to car audio. That was one of many things that we didn't invent. We just
Right.
brought it from another.
What were some other items like that you were involved in bringing to car audio?
Okay, it would be hard to find a big car stereo now that doesn't have stiffening caps in it. We trademarked that name. The first time I ever showed up at a contest with those in my car was at a stereo contest in Virginia Beach, and they kicked me out of the contest because they said they'd never seen anything like that, and that's too dangerous. and I remember telling them, look, I'm an engineer. I'm not going to put something in my car that's
It's
not
going to blow it up.
yeah, okay, and trust me, it's okay. And no, all the manufacturer reps who sometimes just don't know much about technical end of things, they were just convinced I was doing something really crazy there. We got together with a company, I don't think they're in business anymore, that was Sprague, and it would have been a manufacturer of capacitors forever. And they happen to have a plant in Asheville, North Carolina, which is 3 hours from here.
Right.
And we got them to start making really large caps, and we got that business kicked off. And now everybody does it. It was at one time everybody felt like the way you get good sound in cars, you just fill it with speakers. Well, anybody that ever worked in a studio or has a really nice home stereo realizes that soundstage imaging, if you don't have a good soundstage, you don't have any realism. It's just noise. And speaker placement is everything. I drove that home really hard.
Yeah.
And of course now most everybody understands that, but
Right.
you'd be surprised. I always told everybody my motto was good speaker in a great location will always outperform a fabulous speaker in a bad location.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's sort of like a golden rule of car. because unfortunately in a car there's no perfect location. Okay, we can't like just get rid of the dash, sit in the middle of the car, and have perfect.
Right.
But that was sort of like my motto, and I stressed that for a long time.
What are your thoughts as far as using center channels and stuff like that? I'm sure, I mean, that's coming in and out for years, but what are your thoughts on using a center channel or that type of processing in a car?
Done correctly, it gives more promise to a stereo in a car than it does even in a home theater. But center channel, derived center channel, or hardwired center channel is real popular and started really in the movies. The very first car I competed with, which was my Cadillac, I actually worked with the people at Dolby Labs, and I put the first true center channel Dolby system in a car, and that was in the late 80s. What did they call it? I don't know, they had a name for it. It was real common in home systems. It was coming out then. And it's if it's properly recorded, it's a great way to do it.
Right.
I think that majority of stereos that are sold today are multi-channel because it achieves a really good sound stage, and recordings are designed with that in mind now.
Right.
And now we have, how old are you?
38.
Okay. Well, you probably weren't paying any attention when they tried multi-channel in homes when you had LP records.
No.
That was a total failure.
Right.
Okay. But modern digital recording lends itself to that.
Yeah, because of course most of the time in cars we're still going from a 2-track stereo source.
That's right.
So
That's right. If you've got to contrive it, what would be the right word? If you've got to synthesize it, it's never going to be the same as having a true multi-channel recorder.
Right.
your name has usually been somewhat synonymous with someone who likes to bust the myths in audio. What are some of the myths that are in audio that you think are still prevalent today that you've disproved over the years?
You can't disprove the strongest ones, okay? There are people that think they can hear wire, and there are people that think they can hear amplifiers, and no amount of proof will change their minds, okay? It's sort of like I once had a business where I was making very high dollar electronic equipment for record companies that were manufacturing product that were like going into CDs and cassettes and finished product, and in their studios. My background, I considered myself an audiophile, and I was really interested in what makes one thing sound better than another. And because of the company that I had, I was keenly interested because I was selling these recording systems with processing in them, and they were selling for about $250,000 each.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so we had a budget to make sure that our line drivers and our D to A converters and stuff were the best. So myself and a couple of my top guys, we started working really hard to do some scientific testing to see just what audibility was all about, okay, and what made this amplifier here sound sweet, and which made this one sound crisp, and which made this one sound smooth, okay? These
Chocolatey and velvety and whatever
right.
other words you can put on it.
Yeah, okay, so we spent a lot of time on that. And the more time we spent on it, the less we were able to define anything. And we did lots of A/B testing for audibility by all sorts of methods. And we started to realize anytime there was a perceived difference and it was repeatable, so you could say, yeah, there was somebody heard something, we always could trace it to level errors, response errors, very obvious things. It was never anything magical, velvety about this kind of transistor versus this
An
kind.
op-amp or a...
No, it was never that, okay? It was always something that was very easy to measure. I can say this for a fact. Give me any 2 amps. Put them on the other side of a wall. Give me the input and output wires. Give me an Audio Precision. Do you know what one of them is? You know what an Audio Precision is?
The measurement tool?
Yeah, okay. Give me an Audio Precision. Put 2 amps, any kind of 2 amps on the other side of a wall. Give me the input and output wires, and I'll sit there all day long and tell you with 100% absolute, perfect, accurate which one is A and which one is B. There are no 2 that measure alike. They can be different in power level or circuit design or something, but you can always, there's always a spectral signature, there's always a distortion spectral signature, there's always a noise floor signature, there's always something different about them. And with really good measuring equipment, I can tell the difference. Give me those same 2 amplifiers, put them on a double blind A/B switch, match the levels to 10 times what. There's certain things where some people disagree on what is the threshold of sensitivity for defining whether there's a change in level or a change in frequency response. It's with really good listeners, it's incredibly low. I mean, I have tested listeners that could repeatably sense a level difference of less than a tenth of a dB. Okay, I mean, with repeatability.
Right.
Okay, now the average person can't do that, but somebody who's really keen with their listening and got young ears and listens to music a lot and is really into audio, they can easily do that. But take it down to 100th of a dB, which you can do with an Audio Precision really easy. You match those levels exact. Then you match the spectral curves the same. You can't tell the difference. And I've tested several thousand people. And
Several thousand.
Several thousand.
Wow.
Okay. And at one point early on, after I had probably tested over 100 people thoroughly, I put up a $10,000 challenge. So you can find it on the internet.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Okay, $10,000. Anybody come here and pass that test? Okay, you just pick any 2 brand name production amplifiers.
Right.
You can't build something special here.
Right.
That's got an obvious flaw.
Right.
Okay, something that is considered to be a constant voltage amplifier. If you ask somebody what's the job of an amplifier, they always say, well, to make a small signal bigger. Okay, so if that's what it does, then it ought to not change the frequency response.
Right,
It ought not add noise to it. It ought not to, it ought not to have any kind of frequency tailoring. So that's just its job. So if that's its job, then what is it you're going to hear different? Yet every amplifier company has their own great sound, and it's complete and total nonsense. And my $10,000 challenge is for the first person that can show me they can do it, and thousands have tried it. I had a team at one company, I won't mention the company, they sent an entire team over from Japan. We were doing a seminar in Houston one time. Half a dozen of their top engineers. We went to a private room, did a nice setup. Now, my thing says, I want you got to do 10 out of 10.
Right.
Okay. If I show you an apple and an orange, you think you can pick the apple and orange 10 times?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you sure you can do it 10 times?
Maybe not.
Maybe just 9, maybe 8, you know what I mean? 10 times, okay? Are you sure you could do that? You wouldn't get it wrong one time?
No.
Okay. The way these guys talk about the super sound quality of this amplifier over here, oh, it's so obvious. Oh, it's so obvious. Oh, it's so obvious. Okay, well, if it's so obvious, so is that apple and orange.
Right.
Okay, take your time. I don't care. You can, and I set it up so they can switch it. They can choose their own music. They can play it any volume level they want. Let me get my Audio Precision out and match the level of those things so they're exactly the same. And you can't do it.
Yeah.
And I've yet to see anybody that could. I did this at the Audio Engineering Society. It's 20 years ago. And the only people that came in there were professional recording engineers and people like that.
Right.
Nobody passed it. I've done it my favorite story. A guy from New York drove down here to North Carolina with his wife. I don't think they'd been married long, but he brought two amplifiers, and one was a brand A and a brand B. I don't want to say, okay. He had a car stereo shop, and this amplifier was his top brand, and this one was his bargain brand. We set it up. And in the meantime, while I was setting it up, and his wife, they were talking, they were explaining that he was going to take the $10,000. They were going to go down to Florida and visit Disneyland. Okay.
He already got it spent.
Oh, he already had it spent. Okay. Great story. Okay. In order for me to really take the time to like really set the thing up carefully, you got to go through a qualifying round, because that just takes out the deaf people. Okay. And he passed it, so he was a good listener. He was one of those guys that could hear a fraction of a dB. Okay, and just level sensitivity. So he passed that with flying colors, quick. And I said, oh, okay, this guy, I got to really make sure I get everything adjusted just right. Okay. And as soon as he'd switched just a couple of times, he looked at me, he said, this is really hard, isn't it? I said, yeah, but take your time. I said, maybe you're the one. And he sat there for the 10 sequences. He took well over an hour. He went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he went back to sequence number 1 again and went through them all again. And he looked at me, he said, man, come here, I want to talk to you. We went in the side room. He said, man, so I don't think I'm doing good on this. I said, well, I didn't think it would be easy. And he said, my wife's going to kill me if I don't get this. I said, well, I wish you good luck. And so he went back in there and did it. And while he was going through it again, his wife looked at him. She said, he can't do this, can he? I said, well, I don't know.
We haven't seen the results yet.
I said, if he can, he's the first person out of a lot of people that can. True to everybody else, he failed it miserably. And I try to make this analogy. Okay, let me do this. Here's a calibration weight. Just here's a calibration weight. Okay. Now, I can't do the math right now, but we have our 5 senses: sight, smell, touch.
Right.
Okay. This right here is a 25 kilogram calibration weight. Okay. It's got dust on it, so it's no longer accurate. But let's say on program material, and I can show you, because I built a special box. I'll give you one of my test CDs. Okay, I have a test CD with a track on it where the distortion starts at like 0.01 and it goes to 0.05, 0.1, 0.5, 1%, 2%, 3%. On music, you can't hear less than 2 or 3% distortion. So how is 0.005% distortion going to make any difference in what you hear? It's not. Okay, but think about it like this. Imagine we're going to compare the sense of touch with that of hearing. Okay, now if I was to take this weight here, and let me find something that's kind of heavy. Okay, here I'll make this analogy. This thing doesn't weigh anywhere. Oh, no, wait a minute. Let me find something here. Give me a second. Here we go. If I put this on here, and you pick this up, and you put that on there, I can tell that's on there. Okay, and I don't know what it is, but I'm going to say maybe that's 10% of the weight of that.
Right.
Maybe, I don't know, but I can feel 10%. Now, suppose I put this on there, like this. Let's just say, for sake, maybe that's 2%. I can't tell that. Okay, all right. Let's put that on there. Oh, that's 0.02%.
Don't know.
Okay, now look at some of the stuff that's claimed for amplifier percentages, 0.0005, like that means something.
Right.
Okay, that's like putting that on there. You gonna tell that? Of course you can.
Right.
And your hearing is no different than all your other senses.
Right.
It's something called a JND. Scientists call it a just noticeable difference. And below a just noticeable difference, you can't tell the difference. And that's one of the reasons why amplifiers now are so good compared to what they were 30 and 40 years ago. If they even meet minimum spec, you're not going to hear them.
What about signal to noise ratio? Similar.
Okay, well, on my test CD, and I'm not promoting that because I quit making them because they're bootlegged in China by the millions.
Oh my.
Okay, so I just gave up on that. Okay, it's almost the same thing. If we were sitting over there by the air compressor that was running a while ago,
Right.
and a fly flew around, we wouldn't hear it, right? I mean, it's all percentages. And in the presence of a greater thing, you can't hear a smaller thing. If one amplifier's got excessive noise in it, of course you can hear it. If you read my rules for the test, both the noise floors of both amplifiers in the test have to be below a certain number. Now, people argue this, and they just don't get it.
Right.
And the people that fail the test say, "Oh well, I use this side of my brain when I take a test. I use this side of my brain when I listen to music." Those are the kind of excuses I get out of educated people. Okay, people that are just plain idiots. They go, "Oh well, I don't know, something funny about the test. It's too hard." Okay, so what can I say? So
Right.
you brought this subject up, and I had to discuss it, and it's not popular, and it is argued to death on the internet. I'm still waiting for the Golden Ear to come here and show me they can do it. Look, I have gone into, I won't embarrass anybody, but I have gone into studios. I'll say it off the record, but I won't say it on here, where Grammy Award-winning producers on their own system in their own studio couldn't tell a difference.
What about when you run the amps hard and they run into distortion? Different amps do behave differently then, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That is totally true. They behave much differently. But that's like saying, I'm going to buy this Corvette over that Ferrari because when I wrap it around a pole, it's this one's going to have less damage or something. You see what I'm saying?
Right,
like, then
You shouldn't be running into distortion.
just
So
get a bigger amp.
Right, get a bigger
Okay,
amplifier.
the test actually says that you can compare a 50 watt amp to a 1,000 watt amp. You just got to keep the comparison listening below 50 watts. Okay, that's mindless thinking there.
Right.
You just if you have to think about that when you don't have a good brain.
Right.
All right. Okay, so the test cannot be done at a level above the power level of the smallest of the two amps.
Right.
Of course you can hear, but all you got to do is run it at a 100 watt level, and the 50 watt amp's going to be totally clipping, and a 1,000 watt amp's going to be totally clean.
Right.
Of course you can hear that difference. What's the point of saying, I want this amp because it's a better amp than the other one, and I'm going to play it so that it's totally distorted? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
Okay. Believe me, everything you can think of and every excuse that's been made, I've heard it 100 times.
I guarantee it.
Okay?
Yep.
And so there you go. I mean, like, it's real obvious. In the test, it says the left and right channels can't be reversed.
Right.
Well, if every time you switch from one amp to the other, if the violins went from stage right to stage left, gee whiz, oh, I can hear a difference. Well, I guess you can.
Right.
The comparison I'd like to make on that is to like watches. A Rolex doesn't make better time than a Timex.
$35,000 watch, okay? It doesn't make me on time, okay? I'm just as late as if I had a $5 plastic Timex.
But if you enjoy that watch, then that's
Okay, and if I think that gives me more hours in a day,
But it doesn't.
I'm an
Right.
idiot. Okay,
Right.
and
what you're trying to say is, like with the amplifiers, is don't explain it away with reasons that don't exist. Right?
well, apparently they exist.
Somebody thinks so anyway.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah, just go online and look at the objections. It's hilarious, and it's an entire industry that ought to know better, and they don't. They go on. It just continues on, and the excuses are ridiculous, and it's a shame. But you plan the next time you come here, bring your best golden ear you know, travel along with you, and let me do a little demo. An ABX test is designed to make it. Have you ever seen how one works?
No.
Let me take a few minutes and show you. I
Okay.
won't have time to set it all up, but I
Sure.
want to show you
Yeah.
the purpose of an ABX. If there is a detectable difference in an ABX test, you can tell much better, because I can purposely make something different in one of the amps, like a little level change, and you can
Right.
detect it in an ABX test better than an AB test. And of course, any valid test like that has to be double blind. Humans are really weird. you get a bunch, 100 people in to test a new drug. You're not going to get valid results if you don't get another 100 people, give them a placebo, and compare the results.
Right.
The human mind is a weird, funny thing, okay? And power of suggestion is really an interesting thing.
Yeah.
To put a cap on the competition side of things, looking, I mean, obviously you're not involved presently, but I would say not a lot has changed over the years, and the same arguments come up and the same suggestions come up. In fact, I had screenshot, I think one of the first interviews that you had with Dave in like 91 or so, and you were saying we need to, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially make competition more spectator friendly like the other big sports. Otherwise, it's just going to be.
Otherwise, it's going to do what it did.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Otherwise, I'm going to be 100% right, and I'm sitting here 25 years later, to see what I was trying to say.
Right.
Okay. They couldn't figure out how to make it a spectator sport. But things tend in human nature to be that way. For example, okay, I don't want to sound really too much like a complainer, but let's take NASCAR for example. Okay, there was a time when if you race in NASCAR, you could just about show up with anything that had four wheels on it. Okay, and then they tightened the rules up a little bit, and you had to be able to go to the dealership and buy what you were racing. Okay, and then they get well, let's make it so everybody's a winner. You know what I mean? And now they're racing cars that don't even exist. Okay, the only difference between the one brand of car and the other brand of car is
Sticker.
Is the sticker on it. Right, that's right. They got the same engines, and they got the same profiles, and there's no difference. And they've turned it into they might as well do away with a track and just have a pit stop contest, because that's what NASCAR's turned out to be. And I built motors for some of the NASCAR guys for street cars. Okay, they're all just 2 hours away. Bobby Allison, for one, there's a motor of his right behind Xavier there. Okay, they'll all tell you, the old timers, they've ruined NASCAR. Now when they have a big race and they try to stay off the stands because they painted the seats every other different kind of color, it makes it look like there's people in them. You know what I mean? So that's what happens when you liberalize a sport. Okay. You make it so everybody can be a winner, and you hold back the innovators. And I just, car audio, they just didn't get it right. And I'm not saying I have the answer for what went wrong, but I wrote an article in the Tech Briefs around 1997 or 8, I think it was, and I said that watch out for the OEMs, because the OEMs are paying attention to what you're doing, and you're not going to have this market to yourself forever. And the future of this market is going to go to the people that are innovators and integrators, and can take an otherwise nice car stereo and make an improvement to it. as opposed to the old-fashioned method of just gutting it out and throwing a bunch of junk in there.
You've done a lot of things in car audio, and you're obviously not, again, involved with it as much, if at all, now. But looking back on it, what was your favorite achievement during that time?
I think just the auto sound seminars. Some of those seminars were attended by several hundred people at a time. We had a lot of people come to those seminars, and the car companies sent people to the seminars. Okay, they were there too, not waving their flags, their brand flags, but they were there, and they were paying attention. I really enjoyed the seminars because typically it was a big room or a small room full of people. I mean, some of the seminars had as little as 30 people, and some of them had 200 and 300 people. And those were people that were really hungry to learn more about the real physics and the science of electronics and sound and audio. And so I think that was my favorite part of it.
What would you have done different?
I never looked back. I
Just,
yeah.
What would be your advice to somebody getting into car audio with the background that you know?
Get a good double E degree. See, this place right here, this was AutoSound in years past,
right.
but now it's a Grand National Performance Garage, a restoration, and that's all I do now. I'm retired from the software business, and I build, I do everything from complete ground-up restorations to all-out race cars.
Wow.
And you can look around you, and you're surrounded by 25 motors in here and 20, 30 cars out in on the lot, and that's what I'm doing, and I just love doing it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'd change anything.
That's awesome. What would you show? I mean, I know it's audio, but I'd like to look around the place. If you'd
Sure.
show us around,
Yeah.
tell us what you do.
I'll show you this. Well, and I'll show you the 6-foot woofer,
Nice.
and I'll take you where I've got the Grand National stereo car stashed.
You still got it?
Of course. I tell you what. Okay, now you just asked me maybe I do have a regret. Back in probably it was '94. I had I'll just say someone from the Middle East contact me through a representative, and they wanted to know how much I wanted for the car. And I told them, I said it wasn't for sale, and they said everything's for sale. Just name your price. And I just didn't want to let it go. Probably should have. I probably should have
sold it.
Probably should have. 25 oil fields or something. Maybe.
You did have a good barter system.
Yeah. There's probably my only regret.
I don't know where to start, so I guess.
Well, there's a you know what the difference between a Grand National and a GNX is?
No.
About 5 times the price.
Okay.
They only made 500 GNXs.
Okay.
And there's one with 6 original miles on it.
Oh, my.
Lowest mileage known in existence.
Still got the sticker on it.
Yeah, praised at about a couple 100,000.
Wow.
The one below it is number 33. That is the GNXs came out because of the GNX was a high performance version of the Grand National, and they were sent to a company called ASC, which is an automobile specialty company. And ASC McLaren was owned by a guy named Heinz Prechter, and that was his personal GNX.
Oh, wow.
So I bought that at an auction, and I have 3 of them, three Grand GNXs and dozens of Grand Nationals, but if I could only have one GNX, that'd be the one.
That's the one.
Yeah. And around you see a full-blown machine shop. This is Xavier, our general manager.
Hi.
We do everything here with engine and transmission building, from stock restorations to, like I said earlier, all-out race cars. We do them for people. If you go look around tags on the cars, there's tags here from all over the country.
So are you pretty much the only?
No, I'd say there's probably 10 good shops in the country,
Really?
and we're one of them.
Wow.
I'd like to think we're the best, but
Of course.
the other 9 guys don't agree with that.
I had no idea there was such a big market. I mean, comparatively.
Well, okay,
it's
well,
not-
the value of the cars, a brand new Grand National, brand new, sold for like 15 to 17,000. Now, in really nice condition, that same car will go for 45 to 50.
Wow.
And they've really turned out to be really hot collector items. And there's only so many to go around. So, and a lot of people that wanted one in high school could never afford it.
Right.
Now they're up in their career ages,
Right.
and now they can buy it.
Right.
And so they're willing to pay silly money for it.
Right.
And then they pay even sillier money to get them redone. So anyhow, every facet of the car we do from ground up here. We don't send work out. We have our own machine shop. Everything we need to do, build them, repair them, and modify them from scratch.
So this is day in, day out for you now.
Yeah, Yep, I love it.
That's awesome.
And so you can see it's quite a conglomeration.
Do you buy some and then restore them, or is it just
I
customer cars?
used to do that,
Okay.
but now I'm so overwhelmed with customer cars,
Right.
I can't even touch my own stuff now. And actually, I've stopped taking cars now, and have for quite a while, with very few exceptions. And sometimes, we get rid of one, and we'll call somebody up, and they'll bring theirs. They're on the waiting list. So
Right.
it's we're a big fish in a little pond.
Right.
It's not like Camaro restorations or
Right.
Mustang restorations where
Right.
there's thousands of people that do it.
Right.
But it's a real specialized.
How many people do you have working?
Only 4.
4. Okay. Keeps things the way you want them.
Less formal. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me take a minute and show you how ABX works.
Okay.
Okay? The whole ABX thing. I did not design the ABX. I built this one and designed it.
Okay.
But the concept came from medical testing. And the first person to ever really do it on any kind of a scale was a guy in Detroit named David Clark. No
No relation?
No relation. Must be something about the Clark name makes a skeptic out of you. And he did it a long time ago, before I did it. And he wrote several articles for some of the stereo magazines, and they just had an ape fit over it. It lost advertisers. So he kind of became an outcast. If that doesn't play.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Okay. When the test is set up, these were actually in the fire, but I cleaned them up and they're okay. To start with, you pick a nice set of speakers, which I let the person who really wants to do the challenge, they can bring their own speakers.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's got to be just a pair of stereo
Sure.
speakers. Can't be like a whole pile of junk.
Sure.
Okay, and the way it gets wired up, this is the left channel and this is the right channel. And each one of them has a clear input that you can see here, right? And you can see the size of the foil traces. They're good for like 100 amps, if you know anything about fuses and all
Yes,
that.
definitely.
Okay, so this one here goes to here and it goes to here. Okay, so, and then there's heavy contact relays that are good for way more than you're ever going to have for a stereo, and they're all paralleled, okay, and so it's multiple contact relays, and you can see that the circuitry is very simple. Okay, it's 2 in and 4 out. Okay.
Yep.
These little wires are just the signal wires that come from the computer.
Okay.
That switch it. Okay. So that, and I lay these out where you can see them. So there's no monkey motion here, because
Do you mind if I take pictures or not?
no, you can take pictures if you want. The problem is,
I know it's in the fire, but
yeah, Well, you can turn one upside down, one right side up. I could probably put some, what's that stuff, Tarnex on there and clean them up. Okay, it's been a while. Nobody's taken the challenge. Probably, I think the last one was like 3 or 4 years ago. But I mean, there was a time when it was 2 or 3 a month, and we'd have seminars, and there'd be 20, 30 people there. And I was really thinking it was up there. Okay, this is the interface box. It goes between. This kind of concerns me. This is a real fancy piece of software. It had a random number generator in it that every time you did the test, came up with a new set of random numbers. So until you finished the test and pressed, you were done. No, there was no way to know what the sequence was.
So that way nobody could cheat the system.
No, it was impossible. There was only one odd thing about the program, but I never really told anybody. Is that on? Most of these trailers out here are full of Grand National parts.
Okay.
There's 24 trailers out here,
Wow.
and they're lined with shells, and they're all full of parts. Several $1 million worth of them at least. I just collected them over the years, and now I sell them. You gotta think about which one it is. Because these couple here have cars in them. It's definitely not that one. And I think it's this one. But a lot of people don't think the car still exists.
Right.
Honest to God. Okay, yeah, it still exists. Let me get up here and look. Nope, wrong truck. I think I can get it on the second try. Now, you can't see them, so it doesn't matter, but I took the speakers and stuff out, and they're in storage in boxes with desiccant and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, this is the right truck. Okay. A semblance of a ladder here. Now that's not it, it's in front of that one. Okay. Let me see what I got to move here for you to be able to safely walk here. I want to see if you can make it back past here. And here it is.
Wow.
Covered 20 years of dust.
That's phenomenal.
You can see all the, you remember all the things on it.
Yeah.
Not much you can get a picture of, but this is where it lives. That was the license plate.
Wow. That's phenomenal.
And here, you can see. Here's what the trunk looked like.
I assume everything's gutted, or?
The amps are out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, they were under a false floor.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave that stuff out here. Bad enough leaving the car out here.
Right.
I used to have a really big building. Actually, at one time I owned the largest commercial building in the county for almost 15 years, but the county decided to raise the taxes on it to the point where it didn't make sense to hang on to it. Okay. Now, so you can say you saw it.
I can.
Now, I'll show you the big woofer. I would prefer you don't take pictures of the back of it. Okay, because it wasn't in violation of the rules, but it was stretching them. Now the amplifiers are not with it. I sold them to JL Audio, or at least maybe a couple of them, for their burn-in, where they burn in their speaker.
Right.
They were 15,000 watts each.
Oh, wow.
I still have 4 of them, I think. What did I do? No, you know what? I think I ended up selling them, but I had some spares. And there it is, that cube thing. This is my parts cars. I can't believe just what a car in that condition's worth.
I have no idea.
Over 10. Wow. And if you part it out, it's worth even more. Like this header panel's worth $2,000, cracks in it. It's rough. But here's the speaker. If you look carefully, you'll see that the surround is made out of a inner tube from an airplane car. You see the surround?
Yep.
That's why it can move 6 inches. Now the amps used to be in 2 big racks in the back. The walls were lined with batteries to power them. So it was technically definitely powered by 90,000 watts of MRI power amps, and which were also sold as audio amps under a different name. And the amplifiers were activated by music from a CD player. Wow. There's one of the amps. There were 6 of those. Here is the brand of it. It was Techron. But you've heard of Crown, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's their industrial division. Okay. And you see, I converted them to run off of 12 volts. This was a 12 volt line. Changed the power supplies on them. And these are the speaker wires.
Wow. Those are the speaker wires?
Yeah. Now, let me tell you how it worked.
It's a feat of mechanical and electrical engineering come together.
It really is. It really is. And there was so much protest against it based on homologation. You know what that is, right?
You'll have to fill me in.
Well, like in NASCAR racing, they used to have homologation rules that if it wasn't a product you could go buy,
Oh, right. Okay.
then you
That's
you had to sell so many cars.
Right.
You couldn't just build 2 of them and race them.
And that's how MTX ended up having a name on it, right?
Yeah. You know what this is? Everybody knows what a spectrum analyzer is now. That one dates back to the 60s. That's the first commonly available spectrum analyzer you could buy.
Altec.
Many thousands of dollars. It was made by Hewlett Packard for Altec. And I was an Altec contractor back then. I was the youngest one in the country.
Man, it is a shame the fire that.
Yeah. I mean, here's a big Macintosh 2500.
Oh my.
Here's let's see. What else? There's all kinds of really nice stuff here.
Such a shame.
Yeah.
Lots of history here.
Yeah, here's a set of Meyer studio monitors. You ever seen them?
No.
That's a $10,000 speaker here. There's another one. This is a subwoofer and there's a speaker. I just got tons and tons of gobs and gobs of really cool historical stuff here. Nakamichi 1000. You ever hear about that?
No.
That was the most expensive tape deck ever made. Crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Just oodles and gobs of really nice historic vintage audio equipment. Ruined. Yeah, bring a golden mirror out here next time. I'll find my computer by then.
I know just the guy to bring.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. And make sure he approves the speakers
Yep.
and supplies the amps. I have 2 memories that are my earliest memories. I can't remember which one is the earliest. One of them is of Hurricane Hazel, where I was living in Maryland at the time. I was 3 years old. Yeah. I was 3 years old. And it blew a chicken house down, and there was like 20,000 chickens everywhere running around. And the other one was, I was in a crib, and it was in an old farmhouse, and there was a big furnace, gas furnace, and somebody pushed the crib up against the furnace, and I was sitting there cooking.
Oh, man.
And I don't know which one is my earliest memory, but one of them is. But I think it was Hazel with the 20,000 chickens.
Wow.
And I still see all those white chickens out there in the field. Man. Find something else to do for a little bit. Yeah, don't let something like that mess us up.